Thank you, Commissioner, for that very nice introduction, and I'd like to also say thank you for the opportunity to participate in the panel this afternoon and bring the industrial perspective that I was asked to speak about with respect to the impact that we saw with the drought of 2011. And if you look on the cover slide in the lower right-hand corner, I couldn't help but include that graphic because, you know, it was just about a year ago when things were looking very bleak. We had come to the realization that this drought was going to go on much longer than the drought that we saw in 2009, and that was really a wake-up call. And I'd like to say that thank goodness for a difference a year can make, because many of us are sleeping much better this time this year than we were this time last year, but at the same time we know there's a lot of work that remains to be done. All right, I'd first like to talk a little bit about who we are, just a bit on our water infrastructure, and then I'll move into talking about the Brazos River Basin, our location, and some of the unique challenges that presents us with. And then I'll move on into what actions we've taken at our Freeport facility as a result of that. And then I was also asked to talk specifically to the additional reservoir that we'll be building in the future. So from our site perspective here, Freeport is the largest petrochemical facility in the Western Hemisphere. We have 3 complexes that comprise the site. We have Plant A, Plant B, and Oyster Creek. And within that, we have 65 production plants, more than 5,000 acres, and we provide in excess of 8,000 direct jobs. That includes Dow and contractor personnel, as well as that translates to a 5 to 15 job multiplier in the effect of Texas and the United States. This site produces 32 billion pounds a year, and of that represents 44% of the Dow U.S. products and 21% of Dow global products. We have fence line customers or partners that include BASF, Shintech, Nalco, SI Group, and others. And Dow operations in Texas contributes to over $1 billion to local Texas economies where we operate, and then also in excess of $100 million are paid in state and local taxes. The Brazos River is the source that our site depends on for fresh water coming into the facility, but in addition to that, Dow's intake on the Brazos River also provides the primary potable water supply for the southern Brazoria County. BWA has their own water rights, but we utilize our intake point to transport that water to their facility, which they in turn provide fresh water to 7 municipalities. That's equating to around 90,000 people, 2 prison systems. We do purchase our potable water back for our facility from BWA. And then there's other multiple industrial users directly or indirectly. Now moving on, I'd like to take just a moment to talk about our Freeport water infrastructure and our down intakes. You'll see, and I'm not sure I can make that far. The Gulf of Mexico is here. You go up, we have our Brazoria Reservoir, and then on up we have our Harris Reservoir. During extreme low flow conditions, we use the ability to pump into our Brazoria Reservoir because we have a migration we see of the Gulf of Mexico, or the salt water that's migrating back up the river. It passes our Brazoria intake. We're no longer able to pump into that reservoir, so we're operating primarily off of our Harris Reservoir at that point in time. You'll see that when the natural flow is less than we need, there's 3 areas that we traditionally have relied on. That's our local storage of our reservoirs. It's our long-term contract that we have set up with the Brazos River Authority, and then also we utilize what we refer to as interruptible water from the BRA to help get us through those times of low flow periods. Now I'd like to shift over and talk about the Brazos Basin from a system perspective. And key things to note here are you can see, the basin spans the entire state. The lower basin, as we refer to it, is this red section here, and this is the blow up of that. And then you see this circle right here. This is our Freeport intake. So we are the last major intake on the river, so that means everyone gets a shot at that water before it gets down to our intake pumps, and during low flows that can be problematic at times. The 1950s, which previously was the drought record, I need to update this slide. When that event occurred, the state did go in and there was I'd say an aggressive approach to building reservoirs and lakes, and for many years the state had an excess of water, so there was interruptible water that we could purchase, and that was actually our water strategy at that time for the site, that if we got down to low flows, we lost our ability to pump from our Brazoria reservoir, we needed to manage the salt wedge coming up, we would purchase interruptible water from the Brazos River Authority. They would release the water, it comes down the river, and we pick it up at our intake as if that was naturally occurring flow. Now that strategy worked well for us for many, many years, but we've seen a great deal of growth in demand along the river, and the water is not as plentiful as it has been in the past. So I just wanted to contrast the drought of 2009 and 2011. I know it's difficult to see these timelines on the bottom, but here on the 2009, this is starting the end of June where we start purchasing water, and the first part of August we're out of the drought in 2009. Here in 2011 we start in April, and then the rains do begin to come after September. We get some relief, but you are talking about a much longer period of time that we were depending on interruptible water than what we saw in 2009. And we really thought that the 2009 was extreme, because historically, if you look back, the times we would purchase interruptible water, typically it would rain before the water even got down to us. So we didn't see those long periods of time that the flow was just not there. Then the perception that individuals have about the river, and that's really from everyone's individual point of reference. There's two pictures up there that look extremely different. You've got one here just upstream of the Roche-Sharon gauge, is the one that we monitor, very low. And then you've got one here, it's west of Highway 35, west of Angleton on Highway 35. The river's very full. And just for your reference here, remember that here we are at the very tip of the basin. So which of these, when you're trying to get folks to conserve and you drive your car across or you look out, it's hard to convince someone that we don't have any water when they cross a bridge every day and they see it full. Well, that's a result of the salt water migrating back up the river. And it does. It gives a very full river. And I see that I need to hurry up here, so let me press on. So that's one of the key challenges is that we have is how do we manage the low flow coming down the river and balance with not letting the salt water migrate up past our Brazoria or up past our Harris intake. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but just to point out, you can see that as the flow drops, here's our Brazoria river mile, that when it drops below this, we can no longer use Brazoria reservoir. Here's our Harris. You'll see these are the salt wedge here. We actually have to stop pumping at times to let enough water pass to keep that wedge pushed out below so that we can continue to have water to bring in on our facility. Key point I want to make here, and I'm going to go through very quickly, this was the situation in September where BRA's reservoir levels had dropped extremely low. They were no longer willing to sell interruptible water, and you remember that was our strategy. So that was a key issue for us that we had to manage through. So Texas came together, Freeport Operations came together, revised the strategy and said, okay, there's a conservation piece of this thing. We need to recognize it's not free. It's not always going to be there necessarily. We need to manage it as a valuable resource. And then we need to have a way that we control, secure a water source that we control. So what are we doing? We broke this out into storage and pumping capacity, reducing internal demand, and then determine strategic direction. The storage and pumping capacity is the one that you're most interested in today. This has to do with the reservoir expansion that we've planned. The land has been purchased. The early engineering is underway. The early permitting is underway. The additional pumping capacity is underway. The exact build of that reservoir is not determined at this time. It's very early in the process. That'll be communicated at a later date. This is just talking about some of the conservation initiatives that we worked on in 2011 to get a 10% demand reduction. The ongoing reduction efforts in 2012, that will range from another 10% to possible 15%. So in wrapping up, I am out of time. We recognize that approximately 80% of the time there is excess flow in the river. The Brazos River drought requires reliance on storage. Depending on where you are in the lower basin, the senior water rights require storage due to the natural effects of the drought and then any infringement. Conservatively sized storage are required to assure reliability. The required storage reserves both increase and are depleted more rapidly with the infringement impacts of the upstream users. And then conservation is critical. That goes along hand in glove with our additional water supply that we would be bringing on in the additional reservoir, but our conservation efforts are key, and we will continue carrying those forward. Thank you for your time.
Afternoon. My name is Mike Hodge, Assistant Manager with Pearland. Before I start, I just want to give a little bit of history. Janae and I have worked on a task force that the Brazoria County Commissioners Court formed, and we've been working for about the last 2 years just talking about what we need to do in order to plan for growth that we see occurring in the county. And if you look at the areas of emphasis, it falls in line with actually the panel makeup, and what you're seeing is what's going to drive growth and the need for water in the county is on the municipal side, our growing cities, and then also on the industrial side with all the industry that we've got. And all that good news means that we have to plan and be prepared for it. With that said, the drought of record last year had a lot of impact on our city, and you could see in the headlines around the state, not just us, but there as well. I know a local community actually went to stage 4 or 5 on their drought contingency plan, which gives you an idea how critical they were. What I want to talk to you about is a little bit what Pearland went through and give you an idea of how we're preparing for the future and also dealt with the drought. Just a little bit about Pearland. You may not know some of the up-to-date information. Right now within our city limits we have about 46 square miles that we manage. In addition to that, we have an extraterritorial jurisdiction which we can annex into, which when you include that gets us almost up to 60 square miles. Our population as of July 2012 was almost 100,000 people. We're very proud of that. Obviously, we think we're over that number now, and we see us continuing to grow. When you look at our extraterritorial jurisdiction, that number goes up to almost 130,000 people. So we're planning for those numbers as we look into the future. Within the city, our residential water connections are at about 28,000. We also have non-residential connections of 1,000, and then we also track our irrigation numbers separately because, as you'll see later on, that's important whenever we talk about how we implement some of our strategies for water conservation. I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like for what we have as far as our water facilities. We have 11 water plants that pump groundwater. The capacity is almost 18 million gallons per day. We have ground storage and elevated storage at those plants as well. We also have, at this point in time, 3 surface water plants, which basically give us an additional capacity of 16 million gallons per day. So at this point in time, we have 34 million gallons that we can use in order to supply our citizens. And then we also have almost 455 miles of water line of various diameters. So that's a lot to manage all at one time. We have good staff that keeps on top of that. The drought of 2011, we pumped total over 13 million gallons per day on average for that year. When you look at that compared to what we did in 2010, it was 25% higher than what we had done there, and it's still 15% higher than what we're actually going to pump for 2012. So you can see it was very significant. When you look at trying to balance water quality, you've got to work at it when you're basically blending surface water and well water, and so that effort wasn't without a hiccup. There were a lot of issues that we dealt with our citizens and on the water quality side, but we were able to actually keep up with that. Some of the other impacts, when we look at it, not everything not everything happens at the wells or the ground or surface water. In addition to that, we have those 455 miles of water lines. In 2011, we had over 400 water line breaks. It's nothing near what the city of Houston experienced. I think if you may recall some of the news reports, they were experiencing 8 to 10 breaks a day. Our numbers were about 4 times what our average is, which is generally around 400. And you can see we spent about $116,000 just dealing with those breaks, and that's sending a crew out. Sometimes 2 or 3 would be deployed during the day and even into the night. They'd make those repairs, and then basically our crews were being supplemented because of how the long hours that they were working during the summer months. And you can see now, even we're having some residual effect in 2012. We still have over 200 water line repairs that we've had to deal with, and what we're seeing is because of the rain, basically the heavy clays that we have in our area, you're seeing that shrink swell effect, and what's happening is that as the water, or as the rainwater saturates the ground, now we're still having those breaks occur. In addition to all of that, there's other infrastructure that was also affected by the drought. We had some sidewalk heaving that occurred. It affected about 5% of our inventory. Estimates for the repair of that type of work is about $500,000. In addition to that, we've got our asphalt roads that have separated and cracked, and our estimates on the repair work associated with that was about $750,000. So there's a lot of damage that occurs. You don't always take into effect that, how much it can be. I know that there's another statistic I wasn't able to get but was curious. We lost a number of trees within the community and have been working very hard to basically make sure that those get taken down, and that's done in a safe way. But then we've got a process that we want to implement to where we're actually reestablishing some of the trees that we lost during the course of the drought. So just another something, don't have a cost associated with that, but it is an impact that does occur. For us to deal with the drought, I think we got through it pretty well. We had some policies and plans in place that basically helped us in doing that. And there's a policy that the City Council adopted in around the 98 time period, where what we wanted to do was look at if we were going to grow, we wanted to grow with surface water. And what we were able to do, we had a 2000 water study that was, a water plan that was put together, and in that plan, it initially contemplated that we would have about 20 water plants by today's time to deal with the growth that occurred. But with the implementation of the policy or the strategy that the council wanted, we had to change what we were doing, and what happened at that time is the staff went out and started looking at what were additional surface water sources that we could tap into. In 2007, when we updated that plan, we were basically able to show or to demonstrate that we were able to go out and seek other sources of water other than the groundwater wells that we had tapped into. The goal was to convert 2/3 of our water source to surface water. When you look at the build-out numbers that we were looking at, we would have to provide in, I think it's 2025, about 60 million gallons per day. So our target number became 40 million gallons. And what you can see here is kind of a breakdown of what we've been able to secure over the last 10 or 15 years. There's GCWA, there's an optional water contract that the council implemented in 1998. That was the beginning. That was for 10 million gallons per day. When Shadow Creek Ranch came on board, there was a wholesale surface water contract that was put in place in 2005. That accounts for 6 million gallons of surface water. And then in 2006, the city was a participant with Gulf Coast Water Authority and a few other entities in the purchase of the Chocolate Bar Water Company. We participated and purchased 10 million gallons of that system. And then recently, the city of Houston upgraded their southeast plant. And with that coming online in 2012, we have brought on another 10 million gallons per day, and that brings our grand total up to about 36.1. And it's our plan to basically work over the next several years to develop and implement those additional capacities. That gets us to a certain point. We are looking at whether or not we're going to need additional. But also in looking at that, part of our plan is to look at how can we conserve our water so that we don't have to use and build these facilities if we don't need them. So that's kind of the next tool in our toolbox that we look at. We do have a water conservation plan that is in place. It was formally adopted by the City Council in 2009. This indicates some of the things that we have on it. But just a note before we started, we realized the expense that we were going to have to incur in updating and keeping our water system up to that, to meet the demand. And one of the things that the council wanted to do is they wanted to see, is there a way that we could not get to that point to where we were using 60 million gallons per day, and that's what our water conservation plan basically was implemented to do. Just a couple of notes here. We have a target to get below 109 gallons per day per capita. If you look at our numbers and the statewide averages, the statewide average for cities across the state of what actual usage is about 150 to 160 gallons per day per capita. Their target at the state level is to get communities down to 140 gallons per day per capita. So you can see where we are as far as being in the ballpark. And we think we're pretty good, and we want to get better. So our 5 and 10 year plans are to get down to 5 and 10% as far as an overall reduction. We're doing things like we have a landscape ordinance that we implement, and we make sure that if we have that the types of plantings are drought resistant, they don't require a lot of water, and we make sure that they're put in place and maintained, and we still strive for a very good look within the city. There's public education that's part of the plan, and then also the showpiece kind of our plan are our water conservation rates. And what that does is that as you use more water, basically the rates go up. And here, this gives you an idea on the residential side of how the rates are implemented. You can see we have a base rate of just under $12. And then as your usage goes up, basically we end up charging more. On the commercial side, it's the same thing, except that once you get over 2,000 gallons or more, that rate is significantly higher. Also, whenever we track our irrigation, I'm getting the light. whenever we track our irrigation meters separately, and actually when you look at irrigation, it's using that third tier, so we're penalizing those users that are very heavy, especially on the irrigation side. And then finally, drought contingency plan helps us to plan for emergencies. This is very typical of what you see in other communities as far as the stages and the ratings and what's implemented and what you're trying to reduce. So I'll stop there and then turn it over to the next person.
Sure, if that's turned. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Corey Bowen. I'm your county extension agent for agriculture for Brazoria County. I've kind of listened to some of the other presentations. The first one was that kind of keyed in on is we all look at water differently, even our farmers and ranchers. We're going to treat water differently. We're going to manage things. And another thing was trees. Man, the tree's dying. I am a tree coroner nowadays. On the telephone, it's every other phone call. And this will continue. The tree death will continue for a while. But let's look at how the drought impacted agriculture. Well, first, what is drought? Yeah, it's real hot and dry normally, but if you're looking for a textbook definition, a drought is any time we have 75% or less of the average rainfall that year. Okay. So moving from east to west Texas, true drought occurs 16 to 45% of the time. You know, think of San Angelo, Texas. That's just normal for them. All right. Last year was, most people say, yeah, we had it bad. Other parts of the state had it worse, but it was certainly bad around here. Normal annual rainfall for Brazoria County, depending on what your source is 52 to 54 inches. Now, this is 30-year-old data. What is it now? Kind of curious how that'll change. But normally it's 52 to 54 inches. Think about that textbook definition of 75% of your rainfall and you're in drought. We are in drought at 39 inches. Really, we're doing pretty good then, but by the book, we're in drought at 39 inches for the year. Let's look at our annual rainfall for 2011. The top line is where we should have been for 2011. The bottom line is where we actually were. And look at that, in April, we hit rock bottom. That's when we hit drought status of a level 4. And you'll see in October, and I'll remember that day forever because I have cows. I was waiting for that October 8th, 4 inches of rain. I'll remember that for a while. But November 1st, we'd only had 13.45 inches for the year. By then, normally, we should have had 46. And the total annual rainfall for 2011, reported out of the Angleton Airport, was only 20.94 inches. So yeah, November 1st, we only got 29% of our normal rainfall. Remember, drought begins at 75%. We've all seen these charts. This was October 25th, and it was pretty scary what 2012 might bring. Thankfully, we got the rain. Acreage, what do we grow here in Brazoria County? Here's some acreage numbers for grain, sorghum, cotton, corn, soybeans, rice, grazing, and hay. We had 1,200 acres of cotton failed. We had soybeans, 925 acres prevented. Couldn't even put them in the ground. There's no moisture. So what were the total impacts? Beef cattle, we reduced our herd size by 30%. Compared this to the state average of 38% herd size reduction. It's a big reason why beef is pretty expensive. Maybe that's why we had chicken today. But if you've been to the store, beef is expensive. There's been no rebound in herd size as of 2012 due to the lack of available cattle and recovering pastures. We look at water differently. the land just can't handle more cattle, and they're so expensive. Here's a picture taken in 2011 in October. And we'll come back and we'll see what that looks like now. Here's a pasture. This is taken this week. It was not managed. Cattle pushed all the way into the winter. The pasture's not recovered. It can't handle cattle. It has no cattle on it. This is my neighbor's and not mine. But the increased weed competition, there's no grass to shade those weed seeds, and the weeds win. And so it'll take even another year to maybe allow this pasture to come back. USDA reported 176,000 acres of certified native pasture, and losses on that acreage amount to 88% loss in grass production. To make up for that loss, producers either culled animals, fed hay, and supplement. Disaster payments were paid on 158,000 of those acres, amounting to $1.5 million just in Brazoria County. Tree mortality rate, it's staggering. I don't have a number. The Forest Service quotes a number, but this will continue to rise because of fungal diseases, insect pressure we've had this year, continuing to pass on those diseases. It will continue. Many people don't think of the damage done to fences, and our trees falling on fences, and it always seems that happens in the middle of the night. But yeah, huge expense, and it's a daily event to repair those. Here, just a tree on a fence line. It's just happened. It's a daily event, like I said. Grain sorghum. For 2011, we had a 40% loss in yield. Compared to 2009, we only had a 20% yield reduction. The key there is subsoil moisture. In 2009, we started with wet subsoil. Those roots got down that subsoil, and they persisted through the drought. And grain sorghum is a very drought-hardy plant. But we started in 2011, there was no subsoil moisture. It was gone like we saw by April. Rice being an irrigated crop, and it was very hot. We might have had 11% loss, but second crop in commercial rice, where it's cut the second time around, many of it was lost. They could not get water. It just burned up. Soybeans. We plant in May and June. We're in level 4 drought by April. Just a lot of it got prevented, 925 acres. Cotton and corn, 1,200 acres failed. That grew, we had a 30 to 50% reduction, both the corn and cotton. Is there a positive impact? Have we heard that? What is the positive impact? Yeah, we're planning, we're thinking of things differently and planning for the future. Well, what happened during the drought that's good from an agricultural standpoint? We salvaged 16,000 acres of rice, 16,000 acres of grain sorghum, and baled it for hay and sent it all over the state. We yielded 4 bales per acre of rice, 2 bales per acre of grain sorghum hay. This generated an estimated $2.4 million in just baling, custom baling. Generated about $3.8 million in just hay sales, and that's a conservative number. And then that money was used to offset the very high water costs. I believe it was around $325 an acre, and help the farmers offset the water expense on their rice. This doesn't count the transportation. It was phenomenal, thinking of 60,000 bales of hay transported in such a small amount of time in 60 days is tremendous, and I just don't know how to put my hands on that kind of number. But destocking has also helped cattlemen recover pastures. When they had to destock in time last year, reduce the load on the pastures, this reduced input costs. They can't afford the cattle right now. The cattle aren't available but the grass, we're scaled back by 30%. We're only maybe carrying 70% of what we normally could. It's allowing the grass to come back. This is that same pasture. And it allows the ranchers to look at things differently. At least now our input costs are high, but our stocking rates are low. We're not putting as much into the animals. So thank you.
Thank you, Corey. It wasn't all my fault the water was so expensive. First, I want to recognize Bill Ison, City Manager of the City of Pearland. He is your representative on the Board of Directors of Gulf Coast Water Authority. I'm very much appreciative of his being there. I also want to recognize my adopted mayor, Tom Reed. I say that because Mayor Reed has spoke at my youngest son's Eagle Scout Court of Honor. I'm proud father of 4 Eagle Scouts. It's very... Yeah, thank you. Who is Gulf Coast Water Authority? Well, we're a government agency. We were created in 1965. We have 340,000 acre-feet of water rights on the Brazos River. We're one of the largest water rights holders on the Brazos, and we have some of the most senior water rights on the Brazos River dating back to 1926. And we also have 40,000 acres of stored water from the Brazos River Authority. Water rights are issued by the state of Texas through the TCEQ. Stored water, the Brazos River Authority operates 11 reservoirs on the Brazos River, and they're responsible for what's behind the dams, whereas the state is responsible for the run of the river water. We provide raw water to cities, farmers, industry located in Brazoria, Fort Bend, and Galveston County. We operate 3 open channel canal systems that stretch from southern Fort Bend County across Brazoria to Galveston County. We have 5 major pump stations. 3 of those are on the river. We have 300 plus miles of canals, 4 reservoirs, 60 million gallon per day pump station, and a 50 million gallon per day surface water treatment plant. We talk a lot about 2011 drought. These are pictures from the 2009 drought. This is Mr. May's pump station. I think we lease it from him. Mr. May, some of you know this, works for Gulf Coast Water Authority, and before that he worked for 5 other folks, but he has never left that pump station since he went to work there in 1945. We just honored naming this pump station after Mr. May. So he's been there 67 years, and he turns 93 on November 5th. There was a lot of good stories told about Mr. May when we did the dedication. I thought it was appropriate. The day before, he had to go to the doctor for a checkup, and he dressed up, wore, to go to the doctor. But for our dedication ceremony, he wore his regular T-shirt and blue jeans that he wears to work every day. It was just another work day to him. And I don't have to talk to the state or anyone else about how the river is or when the last drought was. All I have to do is call Mr. May, and he'll give us the weather report and the stage of the river and everything that's happened since 1945. It's quite remarkable. These pictures, as I said, was taken. This is looking south, just south of the Julef pump station, now the Mr. May pump station, in May of 2009. This was before we called for the release of water from behind the dam from Brazos River Authority. We don't like to do that. It costs money when we release water. Keep in mind that the free flow of the river water, our water rights, we don't pay for that. What we pay for is what's behind the dam. All those nice reservoirs that people enjoy, if we want some of that water, we have to pay for it. Corey, I'm having the same problem. I push the button and it doesn't go. This is the last picture I'll show you. In 2009, you could literally walk across the river. Again, this is south of our pump station. Janae, I don't know what you did for water then, because Dowell's take point is downriver of this point. So obviously you were taken out of some storage and we were all waiting for water to arrive. Interesting fact, the most northern lake on the Brazos system is Possum Kingdom. When water is released from Possum Kingdom Lake, it takes 19 days to get to us. Somerville, the closest reservoir, it still takes 7 days for that water to get to us when it's released. So we have to do some rather fast planning. What did we do in the response? Well, as I said, we bought water. In 2009, we spent almost $1 million, and last year we spent nearly $5 million, and this year we spent $2 million. So we've spent nearly, we didn't spend it, Gulf Coast Water Authority, our customers, our rice farmers paid that exorbitant price for water. Industry, as well as the cities, paid a lot of money to get that water here, to keep the water flowing and keep the economy moving. So what's being done? There is a state water plan. It's a 50-year plan, and it's updated every 5 years, and it's done by 16 planning agencies across the state of Texas. This is the area of Region G, which has most of the Brazos River Basin. We are in Region H, which has the lower basin and also goes all the way over to the Trinity River and Lake Livingston. Studies are underway today to prepare the 2016-2017 state water plan. Population projections are being made of what the growth looks like. Those aren't officially published yet, but these were the last ones. And if you look up there, you can see the growth chart. Again, this was 2000, and when the the new data comes out, I think it's going to change dramatically when they start recognizing the growth that's occurring in Brazoria County. Nonetheless, you can see the growth, and then followed by that, just the sheer demand for water that's occurring in our region. The numbers are just huge. So we have to develop water resources. The state water plan calls for, to meet the state water needs in 50 years, that we have to see a 25% reduction in water usage through water conservation. Huge number. But the rest of it's got to come from somewhere else. So what are those alternatives? These are the things, I'm going to talk about 5 things that Gulf Coast Water Authority is doing. We're looking for alternative supplies to the Brazos River. One of them is purchasing groundwater up in the mid-Brazos region, putting that groundwater in the river and flowing it to us. We're looking at wastewater reuse. Of course, Brazos River is reuse, but there's still other opportunities for reuse from other wastewater plants that we can use. We're studying that. We have looked at bringing water from the lower Neches Valley Water Authority to Galveston County, but it's going to be quite expensive. We're in talks with the city of Houston to get more drinking water out of the southeast plant for folks like Pearland and League City and other fast-growing communities. All of those come with a pretty hefty price. The least expensive water is that's in the Brazos River. The Brazos River Authority is filed in 2004, 8 years ago, a plan to better operate and manage the Brazos River. They feel like there's several 100,000 acre-feet of water available if they were given the right to manage that river. I encourage you to take some time and look at what's on their website, study that plan. It is going to be our least alternative for additional water down here, but there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that is scheduled. They're on a 2-year track. If everything went exactly right, that plan would be approved by the state January of 2014. So we're following that closely. And I'm going to wrap up talking about the Water Master Program. And I apologize to Representative Taylor. He heard this speech already this morning. In my humble opinion, the salvation for this county and the communities we serve and meeting our water needs comes through the appointment of a water master, implementation of water master program on the Brazos River. We have water rights on the Brazos River, so do 1,144 other folks. You probably don't know that any of those water right holders, there's no requirement that they have a meter. Imagine, Mike, what your water consumption would be in the city of Pearland if you didn't meter. It would be a lot more than 109 gallons per capita per day. It's unmetered. A water master program would require people to measure and report the water they use. Water rights, I mentioned we have some senior water rights. What that's supposed to mean, and this is written in stone in the state of Texas, if you got your water right first, you should be the first one in a drought to get the water out of the river, not the last. And because there's no enforcement of water rights until it's dry, as Janae said, it's a free-for-all out there for water. We have those senior rights, but it's very difficult if there's no one to police the river to ensure that we get our water. I personally believe that if there was a water master in place, we would not have spent anywhere near $8 million on additional water. I can tell you, thanks to county commissioners and Dow and us, Brazos Port Water Authority went and talked to the commissioners last week. I've spoken to the commissioners at their hearing last Friday. There is not support in the TCQ, the Texas Water Commission. There's not enough support for a water master implementation on the Brazos River. Part of that is, if you think about it, I forget whose pictures was up there. We're a very small part of the river basin. We're the last straw, but we still represent a very small portion. The solution to this, and what the message I hope you take away today, is that when you hear in the state legislative session about a water master, that you will assist us in getting some support in Austin to get legislation passed that will make this happen. That's what's going to ensure our water for Brazoria County and our surrounding counties. If you want more information about the Water Master Program, it's on the TCQ website. If you would like a copy of these slides, see me afterwards, or just send me an email. And that's all I have.